Horror in the Night from the series Следствие вели opens not with a scream, but with a whisper that lingers long after the episode fades. The story seems to emerge from the depths of human fear, where the line between guilt and madness is as fragile as the silence between two heartbeats. What makes this episode particularly fascinating is how it takes a simple crime narrative and transforms it into an intimate portrait of moral decay. The episode begins with a fog-covered alley, dimly lit by flickering streetlights. The camera moves slowly, almost cautiously, as if the lens itself fears what it might capture. A lone figure appears, his footsteps heavy, echoing against the wet pavement. In the next scene, the police find a body in a small apartment, the walls marked by desperate struggle. There is nothing supernatural about it, yet the horror is palpable. The series has always excelled at transforming ordinary Soviet reality into psychological horror, and here that transformation is absolute. The detective's calm voice narrates, but underneath it, one senses something broken, a fatigue that comes not from solving crimes, but from realizing how many of them are born out of loneliness and resentment. Horror in the Night is not just about the murderer, but about the way fear grows quietly inside the victim, long before the final act. What strikes me most about this episode is the duality it portrays. The killer is not a monster by design, but by evolution, shaped slowly by rejection and silence. The flashbacks show a man living on the edge of invisibility, unnoticed by his neighbors, ignored by colleagues, forgotten by everyone except his own inner demons. In one particularly haunting sequence, he sits at a window watching the lights turn off in nearby buildings. The camera lingers on his face, and in that silence, one can almost hear his mind breaking. The director uses minimal dialogue, allowing the imagery to speak. The ticking clock, the dripping faucet, the sound of a match striking, all these small auditory details form a rhythm of dread. It reminds us that evil often announces itself not with a roar, but with a whisper. The moral tension is also layered through the detective's observations. He is both observer and philosopher, guiding us through a labyrinth of human weakness. Unlike Western crime dramas that often seek justice as a final closure, Следствие вели dwells on tragedy as something inevitable. In Horror in the Night, the resolution offers no comfort. The murderer's confession feels less like victory and more like surrender. What fascinated me most was how the show portrayed the police not as heroic figures, but as weary witnesses to the collapse of ordinary morality. The crime itself feels less important than the emotional residue it leaves behind. The final scene returns to the same street where it began, but now the fog seems thicker, the light dimmer, as if the city itself refuses to remember. The narrator's final words speak of justice, yet his tone suggests despair. I found myself reflecting on how the Soviet past is portrayed not through propaganda, but through the quiet acknowledgement of its moral isolation. Watching this episode reminded me of conversations with older relatives who lived through similar times, how fear and conformity could transform good people into silent accomplices. The title, Horror in the Night, feels less like a description of a crime and more like a metaphor for a collective state of mind. The horror lies not only in the killing, but in the emptiness that allowed it to happen. This is what makes Следствие вели so hauntingly effective. It is not content with solving mysteries. It wants to expose the sickness of the soul. The brilliance of this episode lies in how it forces us to question our own reflection in the dark window. We are all capable of silence, and sometimes silence itself is the first step toward evil. When the credits rolled, I did not feel closure, but a sense of quiet unease, the kind that lingers when you realize the horror was never just in the night. It was in us all along.